So we're here at the NEC in Birmingham for UK Metals Expo 2025. Lots of discussion about the future for Tata Steel operating an electric arc furnace, not only about the project construction and the contractor partners, but some of the challenges over the next couple of years of making the business sustainable, truly sustainable going forward. One of the issues, of course, around that is scrap. We've spoken to Cam Pleidel-Pierce from Swansea University. The other issue people are talking about, of course, is the cost of energy for an electric arc furnace. Joined today by Frank Aaskov from UK Steel. Frank, thanks very much for taking time out. I know there's lots of people to talk to today. Electric arc furnaces are massively energy intensive. We're going to go from a gas intensive business to an electric intensive business. Energy has always been an issue for the steel industry. How's the situation looking now and going forward for the next few years?
So we've seen that the UK government has taken some step to reduce industrial electricity prices. In the UK, they did that in the industrial strategy. From the report that we put out here in September, looking at these prices, benchmarking them against France and Germany, shows that there's still disparity. We're still paying more for electricity prices in the UK, about up to 25% more, but it has come down significantly from the 60 or 80% more. So there are definitely challenges still. However, with a new electric arc furnace, there's efficiency gains, and I'm sure the company will still be in a very attractive position operating here. But from a sector perspective, we want to get that price down. We want to make sure that it's the same or level prices with our competitors in Europe, let alone prices globally.
Yeah, and of course it's, as with all of these things, it's a complex debate because it's not energy, it's not electricity, because there's two aspects of it that maybe we can dig a little bit into. So one is the network charges and one is the wholesale charges. And if you're a consumer listening to this, could you equate that to your standing charge and your usage charge? Is that a fair comparison?
Yeah, so broadly speaking, if you're looking at business energy costs, kind of electricity prices, you are looking at policy and network charges and wholesale prices. Basically, kind of wholesale prices, how much does it cost to make the electricity? Network charges, how much does it cost to get the electricity from where you're generating it to the consumer? And policy cost is kind of how do we pay for the renewables, some of the social programs, etc.
Yeah.
If you're a domestic consumer, your network charges is your standing charges, because ultimately, regardless of how much you consume, you still have to have a network connection and you have to pay for maintaining that. Yeah. But the policy and network charges, that is kind of really what you're kind of paying for when you're using electricity. And I think from a business perspective now, when we're looking at prices, fundamentally, policy cost, network charges are broadly in line now with our competitors abroad. But what we haven't seen is the cost of actually generating the electricity is still too expensive in the UK, and industry in particular is paying that surprice, that additional cost, because it's more expensive in the UK, and that's because we're relying on natural gas for production. France, Germany use a lot of nuclear power or use a lot of coal power, and it is just cheaper.
Yeah, and that is part of the difficulty. It is so complex, and as you say, the network cost in the UK has gone down because they've increased our exemption, for want of a better word, to 90%. So energy intensive industries such as steel and cement and glass have a 90% exemption. So our network charges are now comparable, if not less, than our main European competitors, but a wholesale cost. They haven't made any changes to the wholesale cost of electricity, but we in the steel industry, and you on our behalf in UK Steel, are campaigning with the government to say you've still got to do something on wholesale costs, otherwise we're paying more than France, we're paying more than Germany, our UK industry can't compete.
No, indeed. Fundamentally, the Labour government came in with a manifesto that said that they wanted to address industrial electricity prices. They have taken some steps, but ultimately we need to actually get parity of prices. Yeah. To do that, they need to introduce some form of model, scheme, program to reduce that price down for wholesale prices. We've suggested they introduce something called a two-way carbon contracts for difference, where you ultimately basically say that whatever the price is in France and Germany, similar price will be in the UK. So if German or French prices are lower, there's a top-up for the UK. Basically, you get a little discount. If UK prices dip below French or German prices, industry pays back the difference. Yeah. And we think that's fair, that ensures parity. We're not asking for for significant. We're just saying we would just like a level playing field on electricity prices. Let us compete. Let us prove how good we are at making steel, but we can't do it with a hand tied behind our back through higher electricity prices.
The thing I think is really important is marrying up policy with the corporate and private sector efforts that are being made. So Tata is making these big changes. How is the national policy supporting them? And one of the things, and supporting these changes, and one of the things we talked about on the panel today was the way in which, for example, electricity pricing doesn't necessarily match up with the efforts that the industry is making, and doesn't necessarily match up with our net zero targets. So marrying up what we're doing with what our policymakers are doing, who we're voting for, what our expectations are, with what we're expecting private industry to do, and then also with what we expect as consumers and also the workforce.
Thank you for mentioning that on energy and electricity costs as well, because we're here today, and that's something that we're really trying to get the message across on some of our key policy asks, and there are many, and it is quite difficult to put them simply, but amazing to catch up, and thank you.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
I guess the challenge for the government, though, is they're saying, we've got a deficit. Everyone's asking for money. You want more spend on defence. You want more spend on the health service. Where's the money going to come from?
So obviously the government has committed 2.5 billion to the industry. We've said use some of that. Really to make the steel industry competitive, to bring investment in here, we need to have a level playing field on electricity prices. So we do think there's a funding that's available there. No, there is an option of socialising it all around other energy consumers. It's something the government has done in the past. It sounds like it's very scary, very difficult, but realistically, you're looking at maybe for an average household consumer, they would see maybe their electricity prices increase by 17 pence per year. So you're not talking per day, you're not talking per month, it's per year. It's so little that it's effectively a rounding error. But that rounding error, you will provide level playing field on electricity prices, not just for the steel industry, ceramics, glass, chemical, all the industries that we actually want to compete, retain jobs here, so we're not relying on foreign supply chains for this. So if there's another, let's say, Russian invasion of Ukraine, another COVID pandemic crisis, where suddenly it was very tricky to just rely on your foreign supply chain, that Chinese steel, those Russian raw materials were very difficult to access. It makes our economy very vulnerable, not very resilient if we don't have domestic production, and ultimately that's what we want to secure.
Yeah, and I understand that might be difficult for the government, but the scale of it, the benefit to key industries, which the Labour government keep telling us is really important, the employment that it serves, doesn't seem like a big price to pay. And I think that's how Germany operates in terms of its energy structure.
Yeah, so we have effectively both Germany, France, lots of other European countries have policies that basically do this. Italy has basically the same scheme that we're proposing. France has a very specific similar one. We have something that is equivalent in the UAE. This is not unusual. What is actually unusual is that the UK doesn't have any scheme. The UK is the one that stands out because they're not providing that kind of level playing field on electricity prices, meaning that really we've paid the highest industrial electricity prices in Europe, let alone world. So something needs to be fixed. Government's taking some steps, but they haven't quite finished the race, so we're hoping to get there.
As I've said for years, we're not asking for handouts, we're asking for a level playing field. And so what are we asking government for? Competitive energy prices. Why? Because the structure in the UK and a lot of historical government policy means that we don't. We have uncompetitive energy, we have higher costs on that than our European competitors because of government policy. So we're not saying to government subsidise us, we're saying to government change the policies that will deliver a better economic policy landscape in the UK and then help us make that investment. And so it has committed, £3 billion worth of investment in the steel sector. And they've already given you, as Tata Steel, £500 million. And I hope that the rest of that money will go to where investment is desperately needed in our sector to deliver better use and a more robust capability and capacity in our sector to meet the future steel demands in the UK economy.
Maybe an impossible question for you, Frank, but it's one to finish on. Why are the government not adopting the contract for difference price?
I think ultimately perhaps they've taken some initial steps. This is a new policy that haven't been discussed and perhaps understood as much in Whitehall. we're hoping we can persuade them and educate them and kind of explain to them how it would work in practice. Because really, it's not a subsidy; it's a risk-sharing mechanism. We fundamentally expect that on average there will be a slight cost to the government up until 2030, but beyond that, the cost would actually shift over to industry. I think there's definitely option to do that there, and I'm hoping that in this Parliament we'll see action on it.
Yeah, because the other thing, and without taking too much more of your time, the other thing that occurs to me is that the UK government has effectively put £500 million into Tata Steel UK for the decarbonisation programme. You know, I kind of think they'd want to protect that investment by creating an environment where that investment can succeed and deliver a sustainable business. So kind of seems a no-brainer, but we would say that, wouldn't we?
Yeah, quite. But this is ultimately, if the government wished to decarbonise its industry, if it wished to retain its industry, it needs to provide the level playing field. It needs to provide a supportive business environment. And you don't have a supportive business environment if all your fundamental costs are higher in the UK and in Great Britain. So ultimately, kind of, if you want to kind of make a success, kind of mitigate climate change, retain those jobs, retain the value in the UK, you got to provide the level playing field. Good business environment, lower carbon electricity prices. So it's only one way forward.
Frank, thanks ever so much for that brilliant explanation of the challenges of the energy, your hope for the future and how it's going to go, and hopefully that will support energy-intensive businesses, including steel. I know you've got lots of people to talk to, so we say to her, but thanks very much indeed, Frank. Good to see you.
Thank you so much. Good to see you.
Thank you.